Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the ICANN83 Readout webinar. There are still people joining the room, so we will give them a few more minutes to join. Please stay on the line. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the ICANN83 Readout webinar, highlights and takeaways from the Policy Forum in Prague. And with this, I would like to get things started. So the host of today's session will be Christopher Mondini. He's Vice President, Stakeholder Engagement and Managing Director of ICANN Europe. And today, Thomas Rickert is not able to join us, and so I will take the lead on guiding you through today's sessions. I'm Lars Steffen. I'm Head of International Digital Infrastructures and Resilience at the ECO Association. So thank you for joining. We also have an excellent lineup of speakers again today. So with us for the first time, I welcome Constanze Bürger. She's a member of the ASO Address Council. Thank you for being with us. We also have Nicolas Caballero with us, chair of the GAC, Jordan Carter, member of the CCNSO Council. Unfortunately, just a few minutes ago, Greg DiBiase had to send his regards because there was an alarm in the background and he had to leave the room. So let's see if he can join us on short notice again. But we also have from the GNSO, Philippe Foucault as chair of the ISPCP with us, Ram Mohan, chair of the ASEC, and also with us is today, last but not least, Nick Wenman Smith, today wearing the hat of the TCCM, the Technical Community Coalition for Multi-Stakeholderism. Thank you very much. So before we start the session, I would like to take you to our housekeeping rules. So of course, this webinar will be recorded. The recording will be available after the meeting. Of course, this is with ICANN. This ICANN webinar is following this expected standards of behavior. You will be muted throughout the webinar, but of course you can always ask questions. First, through the questions part of the GoToWebinar dashboard that you can find on the right-hand side of your screen usually, or you can also raise your hand and ask your question verbally. Before we unmute you, or after we have unmuted you, to be precise, please state your name and your affiliation. And I'm happy to take your questions also this way. And after the webinar, when you close the GoToWebinar dashboard, you will see a short survey, which is always very helpful for us if you could provide feedback on the quality, the topics, and everything else about the webinar that you think we can improve. The recommendations for the next events and webinars. So next week on Monday, there will be a webinar on the most recent study from Dotson about digital market brands. If you're interested in the next round of new GTLDs and especially on GeoTLDs. Also next week on the 26th of June, you can meet Thomas and me at the Domain Summit in Frankfurt, which is organized by InternetX. And if you're interested in the next ICANN Readout webinar, this will take place on the 12th of November for the ICANN84 meeting. And you can find all the dates and also the registration links on our websites, or you can also follow them, the events on our newsletter. And I will also shortly post the links to the mentioned events in the chat. And with this, I would like to hand over to Christopher Mondini. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lars. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to co-host this with you. These readouts at one point were really envisioned for people who couldn't attend ICANN meetings to get an update and a summary, and they still serve that role. Importantly, I think also they're a very good balanced assimilation of the high points, highlights, hot topics, and I think the way that ECHO organizes them really brings out some useful review and reflection on what transpired last week. So it's just great to be with you. Let me just start with usual statistics. I have some numbers of attendees in my ceremonial role as the convener of the Prague Policy Forum last week. Um, we had been in Prague before, 12 years ago, and so it was delightful to be there again, and an excellent host city with fantastic local hosts. We had over 1,300 on-site participants and over 550 online participants, which exceeded our estimates and expectations. As usual, European stakeholders for a meeting in Europe were very well represented among the 130 countries that made it onto the country list of attendees. And for the 4 days of the policy work, there were over, or just under rather, 100 separate sessions. It was a policy forum, so it doesn't have any of the ceremonial openings or any of the plenary open mics before the board. And really, there were no unconflicted sessions, no plenary sessions, but there were some sessions of interest and some milestones. So on the next slide, I've just listed a few of the milestones. These were largely celebrated and noted in the evenings at the close of the working day. But we did acknowledge and honor and thank the Universal Acceptance Steering Group for their 10-year anniversary. They've transitioned now to a more community-driven model, and we're really grateful for all that they've done over the last decade. We had a recognition for the very hardworking working group chairs, and I was very honored to participate in a session from Nigel Hickson, who we remember very fondly, our late fellow stakeholder and colleague and friend. I was really grateful for everyone who participated in that as well. We did have, as I said, not plenary sessions, but so-called sessions of interest. And one of them was a very well-attended session on the WSIS plus 20 and what's coming up in the weeks ahead leading to that summit later this year in New York. And we did close the last session Thursday was an assimilation or a review of the inputs for what we're calling How We Meet, which is a discussion of how to evolve our public meeting strategy. If you want a structurally based readout, you can have a look at the blog that came out today from Russ Weinstein. It goes through the various SOs and ACs with highlights of what they each worked on. But again, as I mentioned, I think the format here today is also very topic-based and gets input from diverse stakeholders. And so in many ways, I find it a more interesting way to reflect on what transpired and all the hard work of last week. So again, I'm delighted to be with you. I'm here to answer any questions from the org that I am able to, and I'll ask you to take it away with our speakers and topics, please, Lars. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. And as you just rightfully mentioned, for those who are already familiar with the format of this webinar, we don't go through the ICANN structure and going through all the supporting organizations and advisory committees. We always prepare a list of topics that we would like to go through, where the different constituencies contribute to facilitate a discussion, also among the present speakers and hopefully also with the audience. And the first topic that we would like to discuss today is the review of reviews, or the pilot holistic review that's also included in this. And Jordan Carter volunteered to to get things started and to cover this topic. Jordan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Lars, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jordan Carter. I'm one of the two vice chairs of the CCNSO Council, and it's a pleasure, as always, to be here as part of this readout webinar. The review of reviews. I guess everyone will be familiar with the fact that in May this year, the board decided to kind of push pause on the reviews. It confirmed in that resolution that the CIP would keep going, and deferred all of the organizational reviews until the first continuous improvement process cycle is done. It concluded the pilot holistic review, for which the piloting group had locked up about whether it could actually design it or not. It continued the deferral of the ATRT4, and it continued deferral of the SSR review and the RDS specific review. And it called for a community discussion and dialogue on what would happen. And just reading that list of things that have been deferred out kind of sums up a bit of the problem that the ICANN review system is very complicated. The reviews collide with each other, and there's a bit of community dissatisfaction. CCNSO wrote to the board in April after the discussions that happened in March at Seattle to suggest a deferral and a reconsideration of how this review system works. And so there was a bit of discussion among SOAC chairs and a whole bunch of us, I think, in Prague last week. And most people seem to be of the view that there does need to be a look taken at this complicated system, both what's in the bylaws, how the reviews work, and how the implementation process happens. There's a bit of sort of diverse views about whether the board did the right thing in pausing everything very transparently and explicitly, and a bit of a tension between two different points of view about what should happen next. Some people were comfortable there should be a short, sharp, focused review of reviews. Some people were of the view that to do that, you would need to pass a time-limited bylaw amendment, which would kind of validate that review process and the suspension of all of the existing reviews. And some people felt that the existing accountability and transparency review, the ATRT4 that's due to have started, would be the preferred mechanism to do this reviews. I share the view of the CCNSO that the ATRT option isn't a good one. The way the review is composed and the mandated bylaws required scope of it are much broader than just looking at the reviews. If we use that, would break the ATRT itself. And the CCNSO Council, when it discussed this question about whether there needs to be a short-term bylaw tweak to validate the pause and to enable this review, was a bit agnostic. And there are some parts of the community, I think ALAC had a view, or at least some of its participants did, that it was very important that there be that the system be brought back into compliance with the bylaws as quickly as possible. So there have been some proposals floating around for how to go about doing a short, sharp review of this process. And I think the SOAC chairs are expecting to talk with ICANN board and company leadership in the first week of July after the IGF. So I think any feedback that people have on the best road ahead and on that particular question of whether, with the board having made this decision to temporarily pause things, that's enough to give us space to do this review, or whether a bylaws adjustment is also needed to kind of validate that pause and process. That'd be helpful feedback for people who are in those discussions to have. So Lars, I hope that's the kind of rundown you were hoping for, and if it wasn't, you've got it anyway. There you go.
No, Jordan, thank you very much for the update. And I know that maybe Philip, you would like to add anything to this?
Thank you, Lars. Yeah, I'm Philippe Foucault. I'm with the ISPCP constituency. We spent some time within the constituency discussing this, and not only this, but also the progress of the pilot holistic review. I think there's some sympathy with the sort of characterization of the problem in terms of resources for the community, and the fact that piling up one review on top of the other, it has become a bit of a problem. On the other hand, I think people within the constituency are somewhat frustrated with the discussion being solely focused on the form rather than the substance. If you see what I mean, whatever form it takes, but what the next review does is probably just as important as the process that will be followed. In that respect, I think at least within the constituency, people feel that maybe the point we're at is actually the aftermath of ATRT3 and the fact that there was some frustration on both the implementation of the recommendations as well as even the draft report, as some of you may remember, which created a lot of controversy. It's not a one-off, I guess. We're just down the road and we are where we are. And on the substance, I think there was some strong views within the constituency, not only within the constituency but also elsewhere, that in terms of the substance, that at some point there would be some need to consider some structural reform. We have some participants who just reflect on the fact that the organization, not the org, but the organization with a small o, has not reviewed the structure, and for a company not to do that for 20 years doesn't. I know it's a sort of mantra for a lot of people, but it does make sense for people to review the way they're structured and the way the various bits work together. So I think that there's some emphasis within the constituency on just what people are going to be doing, just as much as how. And I'm not sure, just like Jordan, I'm not sure people are very, concerned about the bylaws amendments in terms of, well, surely we need to be rigorous in terms of how we do it, but the image I take is generally, let's try and explain this to an outsider, and it's sometimes people are struggling to explain that this what we are going to be doing on the review of reviews is important for ICANN moving forward. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Philip. Jordan, you raised your hand on this.
Yeah. Just to follow on, Philip, one point, the thing that was most puzzling to me about the pilot holistic review was it seemed very straightforwardly tasked with designing a proper structural review of ICANN, which I agree is something that has to be done from time to time. And without that, we're stuck in a structure that was designed largely in 2002. As Philippe says, that's a long time. And so the sooner we can simplify the review system and have a review like that put in place and weave it in properly with the continuous improvement program, ideally we should get to the point where the whole system is simpler, where the volunteer time that's put into it is actually leading to effective results, and where the whole process gives us confidence that ICANN is fit for purpose. At the moment, the system doesn't seem to be delivering any of those things.
I was just going to say absolutely, Jordan. I don't know if Lars, you intend to take back the floor here, but yeah, I agree entirely. In terms of streamlining this prior to addressing the substance, probably the pilot holistic review was not fit for purpose with that objective in mind. Absolutely. Lars, over to you.
Lars, I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Nico, can you hear us now?
All right. Yeah. I can hear you now.
Please.
Sorry. Apparently you were on mute. No, very quickly on this topic, more specifically referring to the ATRT4, I couldn't agree more with Jordan in terms of having something a little bit simpler, more straightforward, more direct. Just for the record, I wanted to note that we, that the GAG recalled, the essential character, of the ATRT4, reviews as mandated by the ICANN, by the bylaws, and their central role, for the well-functioning of ICANN's multi-stakeholder accountability, transparency, and governance. And accordingly, the GAC calls on the board. We basically, even though it was provided as not as consensus advice, but it was included under issues of importance. But we basically called the board to expedite consultations on the matter with the with the multi-stakeholder community, which, according to my understanding, is already happening, and I stand to be corrected here. Again, just for the record, and again to agree with Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. Do we have any other comments on this topic? No, that doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you very much for the very good summary on this. The next topic that we would like to cover is something that also Chris also already mentioned in his introduction, and also in the light of the upcoming IGF next week in Oslo is a very important one, which is WSIS plus 20. And for this, I would like to give the floor to Nick to provide an update on the current status of the debate. Nick, now we don't hear you. Maybe I can. So this from our end, the mic is open for you.
Yeah, it's something on Nick's side.
Yeah. But maybe we can move on to the next topic, Nick, so that we can give you some more time to get things fixed. So the next topic that we have on our agenda is the next round of GTLDs. And as we don't have Joanna Kulisa with us today, Nico agreed to take the lead on this topic. So Nico, please, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Please give me
Yes.
thumbs up or something. Okay. So I prepared basically four main topics for today. The first one being the IRT progress, the second being urgent priorities, as pertaining to the applicant, to the ASP, the applicant support program, and some recommendations and some other comments. The GAC, the GAC's point of view as regarding, readiness for the next round GTLD evaluation, and then finally some forward looking actions. And I'll try to be quick and straight to the point. So we basically, we recognize the critical milestone, achieved by the IRT with the submission of the complete draft applicant guidebook, the AGB, for public comment. That's a very good thing. This document basically lays the groundwork, according to our view, for a structured and transparent application process in the next round of GTLDs. We also, extend our gratitude, to the IRT members, including our dedicated GAG representatives, for their tireless efforts in delivering this, again, as I said before, foundational work, right? Some key observations I can share with you at this point is that the draft, the guidebook reflects, extensive community input and aligns with ICANN's multi-stakeholder model. So we're fine with that. Another observation is that the public comment period is a pivotal opportunity, for stakeholders to refine policies, particularly on string contention, rights protection, and DNS abuse mitigation, which is a big thing for the GAC, and we can talk about that later on, right? And also that the GAC will actively, monitor feedback to ensure public interest concerns, like, for example, geographic names and consumer protection and so on and so forth, are addressed, are duly addressed in the final version. So so that's about the IRT, the implementation review team progress. Now, as regarding urgent priorities, and I hope I'm doing fine in terms of timing, please wave to me or let me know, Lars, if I'm running out of time. But as pertaining to the urgent priorities, the applicant support, the ASP applicant support program, we also acknowledge, excuse me, the board's compromise, to review the ASP at the halfway mark. That's an important thing. The halfway mark, that is 20 qualified applications. But current data raises some alarms for the GAC. Like there are some critical challenges from our point of view. Like, for example, low application volume. Only a small fraction of expected applications have been completed. With just 5 months remaining in the 12 month window. There are some geographic disparities as well. Early metrics at this point, at least, suggest underrepresentation for developing regions, or global south, or whatever name we want to use for that. Risking, the program's goal of inclusivity, I would say. We have also identified some systemic barriers, like potential applicants, especially those new to the ICANN processes, facing hurdles, such as, on the one hand, very complex paperwork, very limited awareness, and lack of local support, local support in some cases. So in that regard, the GAG recommended, an immediate review, conducting, the ASP assessment now and not after 20 applications, to, on the one hand, diagnose obstacles, like, for example, outreach gaps, funding accessibility, and we can talk about that because we also gave some ideas about having access to funding and everything else, but that would be a different conversation. And on the other hand, to propose mitigations, like, for example, simplified forms, and regional workshops. That's something else we suggested, right? Another thing would be targeted outreach, redirecting resources to, for example, high potential and underserved regions, via, and this is, again, just an idea, government-led awareness campaigns, leveraging somehow ICANN's stakeholder teams whenever possible, and partnerships in general, with local registries and CCTLDs whenever possible. And then in this regard, finally, some sort of budget flexibility, preparing to expand funding if qualified applications exceed the 40, I think it was 40 to 45 cap, if I recall correctly, ensuring again that no deserving candidate is excluded, which was the whole idea right from the beginning, right? And I can quote, something coming directly from the GAC communique, which is that, at the current pace, the current pace may not allow, and I'm quoting, may not allow for timely adjustments. The GAC urges immediate action to salvage the ASP's inclusive purpose, end quote. That's coming directly from the GAC communique. So very quickly, again, the third point was GAC readiness, for GTLD evaluation. So again, as the application window nears, the GAC must, in our view, strengthen, our preparatory efforts, on some strategic focus areas like early interventions, in order to maximize tools like the GAC early warnings, to flag problematic strings, like, for example, let's say culturally sensitive terms, and phishing risks and so on and so forth. And, we can have some deeper conversations in that regard later on. But for the sake of time, I would also like to address at this point, abuse mitigation, preemptively addressing concerns about DNS abuse, escalation. Again, I'm not going to refer to spam, malware, phishing, farming, and so on, directly tied to GTLD expansion. And also collaborative vigilance, GAC volunteers, to work, and we have already expressed that in many different places, to work with topic leads on timeline tracking on the one hand, and also developing position papers for high risk categories, like, for example, health, a very important thing in terms of public interest, and finance, another very sensitive area. Some GAC delegations highlighted, the spam and phishing risks, from rapid, let's say, DNS growth, urging the GAC members, again, urging the GAC itself, to advise applicants on mandatory abuse mitigation plans on the one hand, and pushing ICANN.org, pushing in a good sense, for enforceable SLAs with registrars whenever possible. Again, SLA standing for service level agreements. We can talk about details, later on. But again, for the sake of time, I'll pause here and hand it back to you, Lars. And my apologies if I run out of time. So I have more things, but again, over to you.
No, that's absolutely fine. And there was one comment in the questions part that supports your observation that the main barrier for new GTLD applicants from the global south is continuing to be the cost factor. But you also already addressed some questions on the technical layer, and I already see the hand from Ram up. And Ram, I know that you would like to add to
Very
this topic
quickly,
as well. Yes, please.
just to finish, Lars, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yes.
very quickly, to ensure, that the next round balances, innovation with accountability. The GAC, will basically be advocating for, ASP reforms, like press ICANN.org to implement review findings within 60 days, just to give an example, right? To engage more in public comment, submitting consolidated GAC feedback, on the guidebook. Again, emphasizing, develop global south or developing economy support and rights protection mechanisms, and if possible, host, again, as I mentioned before, regional webinars in order to educate potential applicants on ASP opportunities. So again, just for the record, and sorry to interrupt. Over to you.
No, it's the purpose of this webinar to have a discussion, so no worries. Ram, I would like to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lars. From the SSAC's point of view, we are in the process of developing a public comment for the applicant guidebook. In particular, we're concerned about collisions that may happen from identifiers in the blockchain namespace that leak over, if you will, into the DNS namespace. We have participants in the blockchain identifier space who have expressed their intent to apply for the same names that they are using or providing in the blockchain space, to apply for the same names in the DNS space. The place where we have some caution for the community, and in particular for ICANN.org, to exercise, is the concern about promises made in the blockchain identifier space that have an implication or maybe even a promise of being carried over in the DNS space, and being really clear in understanding that there is no way to tie one namespace to a completely different namespace in a complete and guaranteed manner. And there is a strong likelihood of confusion, especially because you have people in the blockchain identifier space who have appropriated the nomenclature and the syntax that is being used in the DNS space. You hear people calling the blockchain identifier space identifiers. You hear them calling them blockchain domain names. You hear it being called as resolvers in the blockchain space. So a lot of the words and the forms, and more importantly, the trust model that has been built in the DNS space is being I don't know what the right word is being leveraged in the blockchain space. And that is a normal occurrence. What we're concerned about is the linkage between the blockchain space and the DNS space, and doing it in a responsible and predictable way. So we're going to be issuing a public comment on this. And specifically, our focus will be on ICANN.org to help ensure that when they issue identifiers in the DNS space, new TLDs in the DNS space, to operators who claim to have links from those TLDs to identifiers in the blockchain space, that a lot of care and a lot of extra work has to go in. It shouldn't be automatic. Thanks.
Thank you, Ram. Nico, you would like to respond to this?
No, not to respond as a matter of fact, but just for the record, I just wanted to point out that, from the point of view, from the GAG's point of view, the success of the next GTLD round basically hinges on inclusivity, transparency, and I would say proactive governance. We as government representatives, the GAG remains committed, to, on the one hand, championing equitable access, for underrepresented regions or global south or underdeveloped countries, or however we want to call, those regions. On the other hand, safeguarding the DNS from abuse vectors, and that's why I refer to DNS abuse, and we can have a whole separate conversation in that regard, and getting more technical and everything else. And finally, collaborating across ICANN to turn challenges into opportunities, I would say. As in general, we really think that at this point, this is not merely a policy exercise, but a test of our, I would say, our collective resolve, so to say, to build a trusted global global internet, as we always say. So I'll stop there, and sorry for taking the floor so many times. Over to
No,
you,
that's absolutely fine, Nico. Thank you very much. And of course, this wouldn't be a complete ICANN readout if we wouldn't have a DNS abuse later on the agenda as well. But I would like to give the floor to Philippe.
Thank you, Lars. Just to reflect on Ram's intervention, and I totally agree. Ultimately, it's a matter of liability and where you put the responsibility. ICANN being responsible for the quote-unquote public DNS, I think it should make made it clear that ultimately the community with a small c that manages one side of the namespace, one side of one namespace, cannot be responsible for the shortcomings of the others, if you see what I mean. Last time in 2012, and a number of us have been involved in assessing the risks of the collisions that came up in the what was called the Internet report back then, and it was clear that that it was down to the applicant to figure out what the risks were, and ultimately the source of leakage was responsible for managing, and it's the spirit of the framework that we've got. But there's no commitment as minimizing the what may result from the other side's decisions, because moving forward, that's a frightening practice. There's no way you can keep consistent within two things that were designed for different purposes. Just to say that, yeah, I think the responsibility should be clear moving forward. And just as a side note, to Nico's observation on the figures that we've got so far on the ASB, I would add that those that we have for the RSB are, I would say, equally puzzling in terms of the variety within the ecosystem. There are certainly reasons for that, and economies of scale, and I understand that. But on the other hand, what is it? 40 altogether RSBs, or maybe 45? I don't know. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot if we consider the sheer number of applications we may have. Thank you. Back to you, Lars.
Thank you, Philippe. Nico, is this an old hand, or would you like to respond to this? Okay, it's an old hand. Okay, thank you very much. So with this, I would like to take the opportunity to go back to the WSIS plus 20, and let's see, Nick, if your audio is working now. No, I can't hear you. So obviously you can hear us, but your microphone is not working. But this would give us the opportunity. Oh, now we.
How's that?
Much better. Perfect.
Oh.
All right, please go on.
Okay. Yeah, so you're gonna say it's the moment of horror when you unmute and the thing doesn't unmute. It's like, oh my god. Anyway, it's all good. Good for the resilience of your soul when you're presenting. So I've got the WSIS plus 20 discussion topic. So this came up at numerous different points across the Prague meeting. So Chris already mentioned the community discussion on the WSIS plus 20. The CCNSO, for example, had a 20 years of WSIS and what is the road ahead session, very well intended, lots of engagement. And it also came up as one of the high priority areas for coordination as between the GTLD registries and the CCTLD registries. So what are we talking about? So this relates to the World Summit of the Information Society. And the plus 20 is because this is the 20th year anniversary of the original. Well, it was two conferences, but it finalized in 2005. So here we are, 2025, that's 20 years. That's WSIS plus 20. So this is an intergovernmental process around the digitization of the world and society and culture. And I would say that there was a WSIS plus 10, but that was fairly straightforward renewal. There was a 10-year mandate from the original WSIS. It was renewed for 10 years in 2015. So this is the 2020. Now this renewal mandate is not so straightforward. This is essentially a revisiting and reopening of all of the governmental compromises and trade-offs that were made 20 years ago. And I think everybody appreciates that in the last 20 years, a lot has changed. So there are lots and lots of areas of topics. And I should say that in terms of the technical architecture and internet interoperability, this is only a very small part of an overall arching piece of UN treaty, which covers everything from sort of data flows and governance, and looking forwards, areas like AI obviously weren't included in the original WSIS documents. So there's a lot of scope for pretty much every subject of importance to the nation states of today, which touches on digital, which is basically everything, is bundled up in this. But one important part of it is this the technical layer. And I think for those of us who are sort of following these things, and I'll talk about the TCCM just briefly in a moment, essentially our engagement is largely focused around preserving the technical security and stability of the internet architecture, and in particular the roles of the ISTAR organizations in terms of how that has operated really very well for the last 20 years. So the TCCM started probably about 2 years ago, because this is a bit like Christmas in the sense that a lot of people seem to be panicking at the last minute now that this is the WSIS plus 20 year. But I think this was foreseen by a number of the particularly CCTLDs a couple of years ago. And it started from a founding group of 4, which is to say UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, the 4 original founders. And we now have 38 members across all of the continents of the world, fundamentally technical operators. I'll put a link to our website and mission statement, but essentially what we're trying to do is to coordinate and encourage the engagement of the technical community to preserve the stability architecture of the thank you, Lars, to preserve the technical stability and security, the good, strong, well-functioning operations of the technical layers of the internet and the roles of the ISTAR organizations. And you'll see we put position papers, thought leadership, trying to coordinate with the ISTAR organizations. We have bilateral meetings with the likes of ICANN and ISOC. So that is essentially what we're doing. The next steps, really, so we have next week, it is the Internet Governance Forum in Norway. The Internet Governance Forum is itself an output of WSIS, and so that'll be a very strong element of next week's meeting in Norway. Then we'll have, essentially, we have 2, what's in the UN process, they appoint co-facilitators from different nation states. So we've got 2 co-facilitators who have already been appointed, and who they will be and have been already seeking input. So, for example, the TCCM, one of my colleagues spoke last week at the UN open consultation, so they're getting inputs on all of these things. There will then be a what's called a 0 draft produced by these co-facilitators. Then there'll be opportunities for consultation and comment, particularly in the WSIS forum, which comes up in Geneva in July. And then going forwards, I think we all understand that although the UN vote is not until December, largely these things are done in advance, right? So now's the time when lots of different things are up in the air for negotiation, discussion, debate, and in the next couple of months, I think we'll have a lot better idea as to where we are all going. So I think I'll probably stop there, but I think, yeah, I'll be interested in Jordan obviously knows a lot about this as well, and fellow member of the TCCM from the early days 2 years ago. I'd say that last year there was another UN process, and this was in relation to something called the Global Digital Compact. And I think from our perspective, that was a rather unsatisfactory process in the sense that it did seek to get engagement from the wider multi-stakeholder community, but it was very difficult for non-government people. I think, actually talking to governments, it was very difficult for governments to engage sometimes in the process and understand what was going on. But certainly for non-government operators, it was very opaque, difficult to engage with, and the information as to what was happening was difficult to do that. And so we were very nervous ahead of the WSIS plus 20 this year, if it was going to follow a similar track. But I would say that there seems to be a lot more positive engagement with the wider multi-stakeholder community, including obviously the technical operators. And I think we're cautiously optimistic about the renewal of the WSIS mandate, preserving some of the things that we say are pretty much essential for the continuing smooth technical layer functioning. So I'll hand it over to Jordan and anybody else who wants to chip in. It's a very interesting topic, I think my final point would be that part of the reason of forming a coalition, and it is a technical community coalition, not the only one that could possibly exist, but the reason for doing this is because it's such a large piece of work that we want to work collectively together, because that's more effective in terms of consistency of what our different governments are hearing from us as a technical community. But also there's a huge amount of consultations, meetings, to cover, and so it's very difficult for any one organization to do that. And so we try to share information, insights, and essentially crowdsource our collective input to be to make less of a strain on us individually and to be more effective as a collective. So that's broadly speaking where we're at.
Thank you very much, Nick. And yes, this is definitely important work. This is also why ECHO is one of the supporting organizations for the TCCM. Jordan, would you like to add anything to this?
It was like Nick was reading off my notes in part, but I'll just add a couple of points of emphasis, I guess. Speaking kind of personally as someone who's looked into this isn't representing a CCNSO position or anything. The thing that came out of this WSIS originally was the sort of intergovernmental recognition that there is an internet technical community and that it does its stuff through the coordination of mechanisms like ICANN, IETF, the RIRs, and so on. It didn't invent multi-stakeholder internet governance, but it kind of marked the moment where governments officially noticed it. And what that does is it creates a bit of a safe spot for us to keep doing our work under the shield of that, while some countries would rather that all of the business that we do at ICANN was done in formats like the ITU, where it's only vote by vote, member state by member state. So while it can seem quite abstract and political and New York based, it actually ends up being a line from our ability within the ICANN framework, within the regional internet registries framework, to do our jobs versus not being able to do them. So that's part of why we're all interested, I think, in this and why it is important. If the bargain that was made 20 years ago was that we could have a broad-based discussion forum like the IGF, rather than a narrowly scoped decision-making forum about internet names and numbers and other critical resources, which is what some other countries wanted. And that tension hasn't gone away. What's changed partly since 2005 is that the geopolitics of the world has changed. And some of the countries that would rather there was a more intergovernmental slant to some of these technology policies are much more powerful than they were 20 years ago. So that makes it even more important for communities like ours to be having some kind of a say in some kind of a way. And the point of that, the TCCM, was to make it easier for people to do that, really. So that's all I'll add.
Thank you very much, Jordan, and thank you again, Nick, for the update on the WSIS plus 20 process. And with this, I would like to move on in our agenda to the topic that many people are always looking forward to, which is the discussion on DNS abuse. We originally planned to have the intro from the ALEC, but because Joanna wasn't able to join us today, I would like to give the opportunity to get us started from Nico, because there were multiple sessions on DNS abuse, of course, but one was also very well attended by the GAG. So maybe Nico, you can introduce us into the current discussion on DNS abuse that happened at ICANN83.
Of course, it will be my pleasure, and sorry, that we can't have Joanna with us today. So yes, as you correctly pointed out, the DNS abuse remains a very important, a very significant concern, for governments involved in ICANN. We welcome, last year's amendments, contractual amendments, establishing obligations for the CPs, that is for the contracted parties, to mitigate and whenever possible, disrupt DNS abuse as a first step. I would say of course, more work, further work is necessary to stem the increasing cost, to the public of phishing, malware, botnets, spam, and farming. Even though phishing is, I would say, 95%. I don't remember the exact statistics, but I think it makes up, around 95% of as a form of DNS abuse. So we addressed, those issues under issues of importance in our GAC ICANN83 communique on the one hand, and on the other hand, we also gave consensus advice. I'll get to that point a little bit later, but in general, I just, for the record, I just wanted to point out that, the GAC, believes that, the full spectrum of ideas, so far discussed, including both proactive and reactive measures, deserve attention. The many different discussions have included specific issue areas such as, associated domain checking, bulk registrations, gating application APIs, application programming interfaces. I understand everybody's familiar with, APIs, and investigating, subdomains, public reporting of abuse statistics, shared more openly, and we can have a whole different conversation about open data and open data policies and open source policies and many different things, but that's again for a different discussion. Another example is the relationship between the timeliness, of registration data verification, right, and DNS abuse, and the correlation, and transparency reporting obligations. So basically, the GAC provided consensus advice during ICANN83. Let me read it for you, and I'll quote the communique, the GAC communique. Quote, to urge the GNSO Council to undertake all necessary preparations prior to ICANN84 towards starting targeted and narrowly scoped, that's an important thing as well, a narrowly scoped policy development processes on DNS abuse issues, prioritizing bulk registration of malicious domain names, and the responsibility of registrars to investigate domains associated with registrant accounts that are the subject of actionable reports of DNS abuse. So I'll stop here in order to see if there are reactions, but that's more or less, broadly speaking, our take on this very important issue for the GAC, which is DNS abuse. So I'll pause here, Lars, in order to see if there are comments or questions. Over to you.
Thank you, Nico. Jordan, you just switch up your camera. I just wanted to move on to the desk session at the CCNSO. There you are.
Yes, sorry, my my computer tried to change camera and mic on me. It was trying to do a nick to me, but here we go.
Good to see
Yeah,
that
so
it didn't.
the DNS abuse standing committee in the CCNSO did run a session, and the focus this time was on online scams and financial crime, which is sort of a topic that was identified at the last meeting, and compared to the GNSO definitions and what's in the contracts for contracted parties and so on is a little bit beyond the traditional scope. The purpose in the Prague meeting, and Nick is the chair or the vice chair of this group, so he can probably add more details, was to look at the role of CCTLDs in dealing with this bigger picture and raising awareness of the issues. So there were a couple of CCs that positioned what they did. Auda did .au, and the Singaporeans did as well, sgnic.sg. There was also a chance to present the work of the Internet Infrastructure Forum, which is trying to come at this by also saying that beyond the DNS, hosting providers are a key component in effectively dealing with these problems of financial abuse or scams. And there was also, because you want law enforcement in the room, there was a presentation from the FBI as well on the scale of online internet-mediated crime. And there's just a factoid out of that. $16 billion in internet-related crime that they identified in 2024, and that was up 33% on 2023. So I think that helps to explain both the scale of the problem, why there is pressure coming from GAC and governments in dealing with this. So for the CCNSO's track, obviously each registry does its own policy in conformance with its national law and community expectations. And that group wants to deepen the understanding of this topic with other stakeholder and other perspectives in the room in Oman. So there'll be more to come here. So that's my potted review of what came up in Prague. There you go.
Thank you very much, Jordan. And Philippe, would you like to add anything from the GNSO perspective, even also especially due to the fact that Greg is obviously not able to rejoin us?
Thanks, Lars. I'm not sure I can cover everything that the GNSO does on this, but just to let people know that on the one hand, on the sort of pre-policy side of things, the GNSO Council has had what they call a small team on the topic that's been resuscitated. There's been a small team for ages, but I think it was recreated a couple of months ago, probably, to consider the various avenues to tackle the topic. During ICANN83, there've been at least three or four tracks within the GNSO to consider a way to address the problem. I don't know if I'm cautious enough, but one of which was indeed a PDP. Others argued for another round of direct negotiation between the organization and the contracted parties. All of this being around the timeline, because in terms of I wouldn't know the PDP manual by heart, but we're talking at least 14 months, and it's when you deal with on the other side things like AI generated registrations, it's a losing race, as it were. So the commercial stakeholder group in particular has put together a number of issues that Nico alluded to, was sort of aligned with what Nico said in terms of addressing bulk registrations, imposted domain names, the need to pivot, as they say, to sort of generalize when you've identified an issue and address the case at hand, try to generalize it. In terms of the account, for example, that would facilitate addressing the problem holistically. I guess that's the word, rather than just playing whack-a-mole. So we've been dealing with this. I think we don't have a solution. I guess all of this, at least as far as the GNSO is concerned, will go through council ultimately with the various inputs. But at least within the commercial stakeholder group, people are acutely aware of the need to address that as quickly as possible. And I think people realize that. I know there are existential issues for ICANN, but this one, as nature aborts a vacuum, as we say, and ultimately, if as far as Gs are concerned, if ICANN doesn't do anything on this, the lawmakers will, and it's not good for fragmentation. I think we know that by and large, and there was a session with between the CSG and the contracted parties at ICANN83 on reviewing the cases and trying to understand why the way some of the abuse reports were written were not fit for purpose, as far as a legal team from a registrar, for instance, would read that report. So it's really hands-on work, but ultimately we appreciate that there are just probably a handful, maybe not a handful, but a marginal part of the contracted parties who actually ROG, if I may use the word, registrars, and the other part is good willing. So I think it's within the interest overall of the community to address that. We just hope that we can do it timely moving forward. Thanks, Lars. Over to you.
Thank you, Philip. Nick, please.
Yeah, just a couple of extra points. Thanks very much to Jordan and also to Philippe for their points on this. From the CC's point of view, we're not so much looking at the main ICANN preoccupations of abusively registered domains, because there's such a small number of abusively registered domains in most CCTLDs, even large open ones like .uk or .de. The issue of compromised websites of innocent registrations, where you've got an elderly or an increasingly aging population of websites where they've been around for many years and they just have not got the correct countermeasures for virus and cybersecurity that you would expect. So the majority, or in some CCTLDs, the majority of the phishing attacks are done through compromised websites. So it's actually nothing to do with the domain registration at all. So that is something that we've been socializing. It's very interesting to hear from the Singapore registry, for example, how proactive they are at reaching out to their registrants, using their local connections with law enforcement to actually remove at source, which is why it's so interesting and quite a complicated area. So I think that's an area that we're going to continue to discuss, which is what more can registries do to facilitate that sort of getting to the root cause of it and fundamentally taking things down more effectively. But also, I think from the CC's point of view, not removing abuse, but actually preventing it from happening in the first place is really our priority. The second thing is, and this is with a slightly different hat on, but I sit on the advisory council for the NetBeacon Institute, who do a lot of reports on these sorts of things and done some thought leadership. And they've recently published a white paper setting out 5 potential sort of short, narrow focused PDPs, including these things which have seemed to be a big problem and low hanging fruit in terms of bulk registrations, allowing access to APIs for bulk registration to people with really very little due diligence and checking. This pivot thing where if you have an account which has 100 domain names in, and one of them is clearly got actionable DNS abuse, well, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a look at the other 99 on that account? So this is this sort of, well, just use a bit of curiosity when you receive your abuse reports. And if it seems to be linked with clearly other numerous abusively registered domain names to carry out phishing attacks, then wouldn't you, as a prudent and respectable operator of a technical infrastructure, perhaps do something about the other 99 without having to receive a formal report for all of the 100 domains? If you get one, then use some initiative and that sort of thing. So those are, I think, gaining traction, and I think 1 or 2 of those will go through to a fairly focused PDP before the next ICANN meeting, if the GNSO Council, am I allowed to say this, has got any sense. I think they will see, as Philip said, where the wind is blowing, and take on board, I think, what are very constructive and positively intentioned proposals to actually make a meaningful difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick, for mentioning the paper from the NetBeacon Institute with the PDP proposals. That's very important. Nick, you just lowered your hand.
Sorry. Yeah. I just, building up a little bit on what Jordan mentioned and also Philippe, again, let me just insist from the point of view of the GAC again that further work, more work is necessary, again, to stem the increasing cost, to the public, not only to the public, but also to governments in general, of phishing, malware, and the whole the other forms of DNS abuse. Now, one very quick observation as regarding the timelines, timing in general, not only as regarding the relationship between the timeliness of registration data, verification, and DNS abuse, and we could have a technical conversation and get to see how the whole thing works, right? But also the timing of the PDPs, and that's why we're a little bit concerned about the the kind of progress we might or might not be able to achieve as regarding the speeding up the PDP processes. And I gave a ridiculous example, during ICANN83 during our session in that regard. This guy coming from the small Magellanic cloud galaxy and seeing how the PDP in that case it was an expedited PDP process taking 7 years so far. Started in 2018. According to that specific example, and trying to find ways to improve that, because otherwise it would be detrimental, very especially taking into account that this is a very special year, I would say, as regarding the WSIS plus 20 review and many other things. But again, if that were not the case, let's just say that this Martian visitor, Martian ambassador came and started asking about the way we do PDPs, we develop PDPs and the time it takes and everything. Gentlemen, please allow me to say that we actually need to get some sort of improvement in that regard. So that's all I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nico. The point is well taken. Take a look at the time. I would like to move on to the next topic if there are no further interventions on DNS abuse. Which leads us to the next topic, which is the ICP2 review, and also to our new speaker in this round, which is Constanze Bürger. Thank you for being with us. Constanze, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for your invitation. I'm Constance. I'm a member of the Address Supporting Organization Council, and I bring you best regards from my colleagues, from Hervé Clément, our chair, and my colleagues who presented also via the ICANN meeting. And I have a short summary from the policy forum, and I want to introduce you a really heavy technical topic. Thank you, Jordan and Nick, also for your view to your insights. It's very interesting for me to see this, and the others for the issues you figured out in the ICANN meeting. Next slide, please. Just a few words about the ASO-AC. The Address Supporting Organization is one of the 3 supporting organizations in the ICANN community and reviews and develops recommendations on Internet protocol issues and Internet resources, autonomous systems, and reverse DNS. The ASO advises the ICANN board on policy issues relating to the operations, assignment, and management of IP addresses. With the ASO, the Address Council is an elected body of 15 members, comprising 3 volunteers from each of the 5 regional Internet registries. And after more than 20 years, the Internet coordination policy has to be updated. So you mentioned already the geopolitical change in the world. So these issues are also affecting the technical Internet systems. And we have to strengthen our Internet against attacks from outside. So the ASO-AC conducted an ICANN public comment process on the ICP2 version 2. We incorporated inputs from ICANN public comment into and also from the consultations from the RIRs, and we drafted a RIR governance document as a new document. Please, next slide. And this RIR governance document we presented also in the ICANN, and we had a participation open from the 14th of April until the 27th of May. We presented this document while RIR meetings and also on request for ICANN communities. And also we had presentations at LACNIC, AREN, and RIPE 90. We had BOFs and also open house discussions. We got submissions and received a lot of answers and comments, and through ICANN public comments process, we offered the ICANN public comments report. It's available. You can see these reports, and also the sessions archives and links to mailing lists are also available. Next slide, please. What did we do while the ICANN meeting? The ASOIC met at ICANN83, and we got this significant feedback from all area regions, and the ASOIC used the workshop time during ICANN to review all of the feedback in order to determine whether each item is, for instance, actionable and implementation detail or out of scope. So we ranked it and we handled it, and we produced a new spreadsheet and to put these feedback in the spreadsheet. Next slide, please. We got a lot of feedback. So, for example, this internet coordination policy is about managing internet resources. So it's about to run, to recognize or to de-recognize a regional internet registry, and therefore we got some feedbacks about approval thresholds. Different opinions we saw on whether it should require anonymous approval of the existing areas to recognize a new area, or whether a different threshold should be used. The number of the areas was a very important topic. We saw different opinions on how to determine the appropriate number of areas. In the moment, we have 5 areas, and so you can imagine every new areas coming up is quite is an input and inputs our ecosystem, and so the discussion about the number of areas is very important as well. So audits, desire for more frequent detailed audit procedures to identify problems early. It's a very important issue. We saw, or you know, what happened with Afrinic, so this we want to prevent. Initiation, should ICANN be able to initiate a proposal to recognize an area? These are all questions we have to handle. Review, appeal, continuity of handoff. These are samples for feedback, and all these feedback we have to work in the new document. Next slide, please. So what you can expect, next steps, and expect a timeline. So we have these inputs and we have these documents, and we sit now on a next version of the document, and we want to publish a revised version of the document by late August, early September. We conduct another ICANN public comment process on the revised document. We expected to span ICANN84 and all area meetings in the second half of the year. A brief ICANN stakeholder communities on the revised document before ICANN84 to enable them to review the draft and develop their feedback during ICANN84 is planned. And the close of public comment shortly after ICANN84 is planned to on our timeline. So that's all from my perspective. Thank you for your attention. Next slide, please. So I have on the last slide the link to the ICANN.org and the bunch of informations we have. And if you have any questions, please ask me or my colleagues in the list. We are happy to answer you, and we provide a lot of documents to inform about our work. Please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Constanze, for the update on this very important topic. And being part of the ISPCP, I know, Philippe, that also the ISPCP participated in the public comments, and maybe you would like to add briefly our position on this.
Thank you, Lars, and thanks, Constance. Yeah, very quickly, mindful of time, and we had the benefit of having a joint session with the ASO/AC colleagues. We've got an overlap in membership, if you can call that a membership in the ASO for a long time. We've been lucky. Yes, very briefly, our overarching comments, being supportive, I should start with this, on the latest version was on the sort of robustness of the process. We're all conscious of what's going on in Africa and the elections in a few days now. We know that there are people who are very good at gaming the system or gaming the policy, so that moving forward, there's probably a need or if not to review this, but to make sure that it's robust enough to prevent this sort of capture. Capture is something that the document focuses on, but we thought there was something worthwhile stressing. And the other was, but it was a discussion about the balance between the global policies and what happens regionally, and the value of having more global policies versus leaving much space to the regional internet registry for their community to define. So that we appreciate that's a challenge. There's no simple answer to this, but we had a discussion around this and how much global requirements, if that's the right word, to have for a new regional internet registry to be recognized. So I'll stop here, Lars. Thanks very much, and thanks, Constanze.
Thank you, Philippe, and again, thank you, Constanze. And last but not least, we have
last one.
Yes.
Let me just thank you, Philippe. It's really thank you for your words, and that's not the first step we do in this renew process and the review process. We figured out there have been a lot of processes following after this step. We have to set up some implementation procedures, and we have to figure out how many global policies we need. And this is a question I ask for support of you in case of the multi-stakeholder development processes are open, and we need your engagement to support this. And also, it is a really heavy technical issue, but we have a lot of good people in our registries, and I ask for support and help, and thank you for so far. And it's a new process for us, for the ASOC, and we give our best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Constanze, and we will follow this topic very closely also for the upcoming readouts. But now I would like to give the floor to Ram for the update from the ESSEC and also on CODI.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody patiently staying on the call. Lots of important topics to cover. From the SSAC's point of view, there were really two major things that we were focused on. We have released a seminal report. It's called SAC 127. It's a report that focuses on the harms and the consequences of DNS blocking. And it really speaks to what is the current state of the art with DNS blocking. Many years ago, the SSAC published a report on DNS blocking, and in that we were, relatively speaking, unequivocal about don't do it. Now we are more nuanced, and we recognize that many jurisdictions, governments have programs that impose DNS blocking, and that's kind of where the world has moved to. So our advice now is also more nuanced. It's focused on three things. One, actually be cognizant of what it is you're trying to block and try to make it as precise as possible. There are examples in our report. You will find lots of examples of overreach or accidental overreach, where an operator was asked to block a particular domain name. They blocked a TLD. They were asked to block a subdomain name. They blocked the domain name, and the consequences of those are significant. In one case, all of YouTube and all of Google Drive was not available for a few hours for an entire nation, right? So quite significant impacts. The second thing that the SSAC's report also points to is a set of guidelines that should be adopted when blocking, which include guidelines on transparency, actually being clear that there is blocking happening, and not to just hide it behind a DNS error, or a site that just suddenly stops resolving, right? And the third part of it is a recommendation. There is a new IETF protocol standard that has been released that provides a specific DNS error code that can be used when blocking is implemented. So we're recommending that that error code be used because it provides a clear protocol-based way for transparency. That was the biggest thing that the SSAC put out. I want to pivot quickly to the Coalition on Digital Inclusion, Digital Impact, in fact, CODI. And CODI is a new initiative that got started it launched officially as part of ICANN's UA Day in May, on May 20th. And it's an organization, it's a coalition that includes support from the Internet Society. It includes support from a lot of international organizations. And the focus is on bringing a clarity that digital impact and digital inclusion often does not have language as a key component of it. And we all know that language is essential to reaching the unconnected, to actually getting to meaningful connectivity. And yet, there is not a lot of research, not a lot of information on how language can actually be leveraged to improve inclusion, improve impact. The goal of CODI is to bring organizations that are focused on the last step, not just the last mile, but the last step in the tech stack, to connect them with organizations that are building technology, building tools, and bring them all together. And the goal of CODI is to act as a catalyst for language and inclusion. The real vision is that everyone ought to be able to navigate the internet in their own language. The sad reality is that there are really only 7 languages that dominate access to the internet or navigation of the internet. And that means down the road, in a fairly short time, especially with the advent of AI-based LLM models, that many languages in the world are at risk of becoming deprioritized and really increasing the digital divide for populations, including populations with indigenous language and cultures. So that's a launch. Go to codi.global and you'll get more information on that. Back to you, Lars.
Thank you, Ram. I just shared the link on the chat, and as you, if you follow the link, you will see that there are already many supporters, also including Order with Jordan and also Echo who joined the initiative. So thank you very much for the great update. We've reached the top of the hour, which means that our time is up, but I think we made it on point with our agenda. As always, thank you very much to all the speakers for taking the time for providing the updates. Also, thank you very much to all the attendees. I'm always deeply impressed that you stay online for 90 minutes to follow the full readout, and that we always see more than 100 registrations for each readout. So there's definitely an interest in this format. So thank you very much again for everyone and to participate in this, and also to prepare for this webinar. I know that this is always a lot of work for everyone involved, and it's very much appreciated. And this is also why I'm already looking forward to the next readout at the end of the year for ICANN84. And Chris, if you would like to make final remarks, it's now the opportunity.
Just to say thank you. It was a lovely experience and a wonderful treatment of the issues. So thanks to all the participants and to ECHO for the collaboration.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. So this meeting is adjourned. Have a nice rest of the day. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.